All right, let's get into it. So I've just been doing a lot of videos recently for the master membership program that I have in my online course, where people send in videos and I break them down. So in other words, guys will send in 5 or 6 videos, and then I find either one thing that they need to work on out of all of those videos and kind of pick them out from each video, or I break down one video and kind of, break down the whole stage. But most of the time what I'm doing is trying to isolate issues or things that they can fix. The main issue with breaking down an entire stage and just telling them, hey man, you sucked here, you didn't do good here, you did good here, you did bad there, you did bad there, is that you don't actually fix anything. You're just telling them the things that they didn't do well. So what you're trying to do when you're analyzing your videos is you're trying to isolate things that can be fixed, right? You're trying to isolate one individual skill for my student to fix. Which kind of made me bring up this video, or why I'm doing the video. The main issue that I see with most people is they can't isolate their issues, right? Instead of isolating one thing at a time, they attack everything at the same time, which means nothing ever gets fixed. So I am a giant movement person. I teach a lot of stuff about movement, entries and exits, and how to control those things, like how to physically take over your body and make your shooting better. It doesn't have anything to do with the gun though, and that's where most people struggle. So I just got off the phone with a friend of mine that I've been coaching for a while now, and we really isolated some of the issues in his training, and it's because he's training the gun stuff. It's gun, and there's not enough movement, entries and exits, and really pushing the process or the speed of that footwork and that movement. Understanding that when you cross your feet, your gun is going to react to that. And, I know a lot of people think that footwork doesn't matter, but it's the one thing that has put me up at the top of the sport at this point for myself, because my shooting wasn't good. It wasn't good enough to catch those guys. Now my shooting has caught up because I don't think about my footwork anymore. I was able to move myself physically to a position faster than most people, and then I would just shoot as fast as I could. And now I've understood that I can shoot slower than most top guys and still be right there at their times, because I understand the entries and the exits and the movements and how to calm the gun down faster. So for me, I made movement a giant part of my training process. Now, this is kind of where the isolation becomes a problem, all right? When you start isolating skills to work on, all right? These aren't things that I even think about at this point while I'm shooting. When I started isolating my skills, other things would suffer. So I'll never forget this. I went to a JJ Racaza class, and one of the things I changed in my shooting was because of his entries. He taught me that I wasn't getting my gun up and I wasn't coming in square to a target. And I damn near fell like 15, 20 times. I just could not understand why I wasn't getting the gun up, or I wasn't entering properly, and all these different things. And I was a grandmaster at that time when I took that class. So when I go into this, I'm going through this and I'm like, what in the hell is going on? As soon as I stopped thinking about the gun, I had perfect entry every single time. Every single time. Because the only thing I cared about at that point in my career, in my shooting, was the gun. Because, well, who comes to this sport to learn how to run? Who comes to this sport to learn how to move? Well, nobody does. We all come here because of the gun. The gun brings us into the sport. But as you start to get better in this sport and you start to evolve your skills, eventually movement, you start to learn that the gun is actually the thing that we use the least in our sport. That's the thing that gives us the least amount of advantage in shooting. In this sport, it's the movement is where the best guys are winning. It's the transitions. It's anything that doesn't have to do with pulling the trigger. And the reason that is because the sights control the gun. We just don't know that when we first start out. We think we control it. The sights are actually what's controlling how fast you shoot. So the faster you get back on the target, the faster you can control that time to shoot the gun, the more repeatable you can make the gun, is actually what makes you faster, not the trigger pull. The sights, that sights giving you permission and you reacting to those sights, are actually what make you shoot faster. So as I started to separate and isolate my skills, and I spent, months working on my footwork, my shooting suffered. And what I mean by suffered is my hits suffered. I didn't get as good hits for those few months. My hits went to shit because I was pushing my movement. I was trying to understand how fast I could go, the entries, the exits, and I didn't even know what the crash was at that point. I didn't understand even my own process and how I was able to control my body and all these different things. So the more I isolated movement and the more I spent more time behind the timer and started to understand, like, wow, why did I get an Alpha Charlie there when I crossed my feet? Like, I don't understand what happened there. And I had to isolate those individual moments in practice or in dry fire or in a match and watch the video and go, oh, as soon as I crossed my feet, my upper body went left, the gun went left, even though I was shooting at something to my right. That's why I pulled off the target. As soon as I landed on my foot when I pulled the trigger, when I came crashing into the position, the gun just bounced and I pulled the trigger anyway, even though the gun was still not calm. All of those things happened because I wasn't focusing on what was creating the issue. So as soon as I started isolating that in practice is when I saw the biggest change in my shooting. So if you're struggling with an individual skill, understand that if you isolate that skill, something else is going to suffer. Not because you got worse at it, but because your focus is on that individual skill. So let's get it started again. When I go to a local match and I'm practicing something, I am going to practice thinking about that individual item, which gives me bad hits at the local match, which means I might lose. But in a month's time, I am a better shooter than everybody else that I used to compete against because I isolated that issue. I now made that issue subconscious and I no longer have to look down at my feet and go, left, right. I just naturally do it because I isolated it in practice, dry fire, and those local matches. All right, guys, if you have any questions, hit me up in those comments and I'll see you on the range.